A Guten Erev Shabbos. The origin, the source, the makor for the 4 cups of wine that we drink at the Seder is found at the beginning of our parsha this week. In the first few verses of Vaera, God uses 4 distinct expressions of redemption to describe the Jewish people's forthcoming liberation from slavery in Egypt. In verses 6 and 7 of Exodus chapter 6, we read the following: Lachein emor levnei Yisrael, ani Hashem, therefore say to the children of Israel, I am God. V'hoitzeisi eschem mitachas sivlois Mitzrayim, I shall take you out from under the burdens of Egypt. V'hitzalti eschem me'avodas asam, I will rescue them from their servitude. V'ga'alti eschem bezroya netoya uvishvatim gedolim, I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. That's already 3 in one verse. I will take you out, I will rescue you, I will redeem you. The next verse continues, V'lakachti eschem li la'am, I will take you to me as a nation. V'hayisi lechem lelakim, I will be your God. V'yadaiti ki ani Hashem lekechem, you'll know that I am God, your God. Ha'moitzi eschem mitachas sivlois Mitzrayim, the God who brings you out from under the burdens of Egypt. You could look at these 4 expressions of God taking us out of Egypt and say, yeah, sure, 4 different ways of saying the same thing. God rescued us from Egypt. I got the point. Another perspective says, actually, each of these expresses something different. Let's look at each of the 4 phrases and see if each one has its own special message. And since the deliverance from Egypt, and really a centerpiece of the Seder, is talking about the plagues, let's see if we can find some connections between the 4 redemptions and the plagues and our current plague, or how we might envision the same kind of deliverances here in our times from the burden that we're all living under, namely our current plague. The first expression that we mentioned, the first expression of redemption, is v'hotzesi, I will take you out, quite literally. What else is there to say? That seems like the whole deal in and of itself. Rabbeinu Bachya explains, not really. It means sort of a qualitative easing. I will remove the labors of Egypt from you, says God. The work will be easier, but it won't go away entirely. Nachmanides understands it similarly to mean a lighter burden and liberation from the slavery aspect of the work. We would no longer be slaves as such. Still working hard, but not as hard. Some of the commentaries say this was actually a bit of a double-edged sword. Once the work wasn't so bad and the enslavement was less harsh, there was a thought amongst the Jewish people to stay. Hey, it's not so bad. The work is steady. We get 3 squares a day. Get it? Squares, matzah. Okay, never mind. That was one wording of liberation. In recognition of this, of v'hotzesi, I will take you out, we already drink 1 cup of wine. If this was what Hashem was promising, that it wouldn't be so bad, that's already something good. 1 cup of wine for hotzesi. The second one is, I will rescue you. V'hitzalti, like hatzala, rescue. I will rescue you from serving them, says Rabbeinu Bachya. Again, you'll still be subjugated to the Egyptians. You'll be a second-class nation, less than equal status, but the work will end. You can see how this is also worthy of a kind of thanksgiving. If we don't have to work anymore, even though we may have to stay in Egypt, that's so much better than working and backbreaking labor. So we're still subservient. At least we could take it easy. Rav Ovadia Sforno has a completely different take. He writes that V'hitzalti means when the Bnei Yisrael are headed out of Egypt, already at Ramses, right at the border, that's when really the rescue occurs, because the very next steps forward are to freedom. Either way, it's not hard to appreciate that this type of liberation is also worthy of our thanksgiving and its own cup of wine. The third expression is, I will redeem you, redemption as in geula, v'go'alti. This will be something appreciably different than the 2 preceding expressions. The slavery will end. Subjugation and servitude will end. You'll be free to leave Egypt. Again, Rabbeinu Bachya asks how this is different than the previous level we discussed, which is the freedom to leave, and winds up saying that this is really talking about another stage. Once we're out of Egypt and we came to the Yam Suf and the sea split for us, he finds the hint in where it says an outstretched arm, which also is used with reference to splitting of the sea. At this point, we see the Egyptian army and Pharaoh are drowning, which means that not only are we free, but no one will be able to force us back. Not only is it over, but it's over for good, for all times. Geendigt. It's an irreversible process. Freedom is one thing when they might still catch you and bring you back to prison. Freedom when your sentence is over and you know that there can't be any more captivity, that's another thing entirely. V'lokachti, the fourth expression, is yet again something else. In the traditional understanding, it signifies spiritual redemption. V'lokachti is I, says God, I will take you, the Jewish people, to be my people. Quite simply, I will take you to Mount Sinai. I will give you my Torah and its blessings, which includes with it the blessings of the ability to keep the Torah. You'll be mine, I'll be yours, ani ledodi v'dodi li. This is not just release from hard labor, not merely the freedom to go out from a different and difficult and trying situation. It's a change in the essence of who we are in relation to life, to each other, to God. It's the instilling of our national mission and purpose as individuals and as a nation. Now, thinking along these lines, there's sort of a Dayenu question to be asked. That question is, really? Would it really have been enough if God had taken us out of Egypt and not split the sea for us? Where would we be if that had been the situation? Would it have been enough if God split the sea for us, brought us through dry shod, and not sustained us in the desert for 40 years with manna and water? Really? What would have become of us then? And still we say at each stage, Dayenu, it would have been enough. Would it? With the four expressions of redemption, would it have been worthy of praise and thanksgiving if God would have just lightened our burden of work, but we were still stuck in Mitzrayim? Now we're talking 3,000 plus years later. Really? Would we be making a Seder and telling the story of if we were still living in Egypt? Maybe it would only have bitter herbs and a parsley and an egg, no brisket, no kugel, no brownies at the end. Maybe the Seder would be a lot shorter because we wouldn't have an afikomen or 3 cups, and the story would be a lot shorter too, right? That raises the question that one of the commentaries noted: the redemption from Egypt was the prefiguration and harbinger of all the deliverances, all the redemptions to come, up to and including the final redemption from exile, which can't come soon enough, after which there will be no more suffering, no more exile, no more travails. Yet, the Jews of Parshas Vaera and Chumash Shemos, the book of Exodus, and all the 3 books that follow, had something that we don't have. They were all together. They argued. There were some rebels, there were differences of opinion, there were even a few misguided people, but at least they were all together. In our times, we don't even have that. We're spread across the face of the earth on all continents. Yes, all continents of the planet. If you're interested in the article that I found about the son of Holocaust survivors who worked as a researcher on Antarctica, please be in touch, or we can speak at the Kiddush. Now, what about us? In a few weeks, just 16, but who's counting? We'll be sitting down to the Seder table, hopefully with friends and family, please God, in good health, pouring for each other the first of the 4 cups to celebrate liberation, redemption, freedom, deliverance, rescue, and spiritual salvation, and all the things we mentioned here and more. What can we hope to look forward to in the 4 months between now and then? With our number 1 plague that has haunted us now, has been going on for 2 full years. We've had a few times of Vahotzeisi, I've taken you out. It felt like a redemption when we got our first shots. We thought, now we're almost there. Just need that second shot and we'll be free. Free from lockdown, free from not being able to fly to the promised land, Israel or Florida, whatever, depending on your opinion. That sense of relief that we experienced when it seemed we were over the hurdle. We were on the way to solving the problem, taming the beast. It might continue, but surely it wouldn't be as bad as it had been. We can relate to that feeling. Then there was Vihitzalti. We were rescued. Once we got the second shot, and the early adopters among us, our booster, we figured, now we're invulnerable. There might still be COVID, but not for me. I'm done with that. Our servitude to the pandemic would be over. Even if the world was still subjugated to masks and no handshakes and no hugging and no in-person kiddush where you can just take the spoon that someone just touched and give yourself a piece of kishke without fear. But still, it's a certain kind of redemption. The third kind, Geula, we have not felt yet. We might have felt ourselves right at the border, about to step over into the land of no more corona, like the Sforno's explanation, almost, but not quite. When the numbers were down close to 100 and falling, we thought we were steps away from freedom. Alas. What we're waiting for is V'lakachti, when we're liberated from the frame of mind of anxiety, of worry and fear and trepidation, when Hashem shows humankind the light to do what needs to be done to beat this thing, and even more miraculously, we all have the good sense to do what it takes. Who knows what it'll take to get us there? Who knows how many more almosts there are between here and feeling the true freedom that we haven't felt since 2019, before any of us ever heard of this thing. While we're all anxiously awaiting that day, that glorious day when we can put it all behind us, start filing it in the memory box, stop worrying about it, that will be the day of true COVID freedom. In the meantime, we have to appreciate that we are all still here. We have to appreciate that God gives us the good sense to take care of ourselves, get the vaccination and the booster as soon as possible, take whatever caution is needed in shul, at home, in the elevator, in the grocery store, to minimize our risk. We have to appreciate and say, thank God with each advance, each step forward, appreciate each element and each component and each level of going forward and figuring out how to contain it, and ultimately how to beat it. And as we put a fifth cup on the table for Elijah, for Eliyahu Hanavi, to herald the final redemption of history, we remember that there's a fifth expression of redemption here also. Vehevesi eschem ela aretz. I will bring you into the land, says God in a subsequent verse in the same passage we've been examining. God says, I will bring you into the land. Eretz milashon ratzon, related to the word ratzon, the pure essence of divine will, where there's only good and life and health and delight for us and for Klal Yisrael. May we see it all and rejoice over it even sooner than we anticipate. Shabbat Shalom.